Sí, parece súper fancy. Eso. La única cosa es que hay la otra de la niña que va a estar aquí y no sé dónde va a sentar. Entonces, um, no sé si sería que sentarse por encima o no. Vamos a ver. Yeah, I think tight whenever something is happening. Hi. Okay. So maybe when Rabbi Shock gets here, she may be able to check. There's no prayer for a country this evening for certain, anyway. But it would be one of the services happening tomorrow. I just don't have them memorized which is which. I'm pretty sure that we didn't pre-assign that in our service for tomorrow, but Rabbi Shock's service might have that pre-assigned. It's one of the two regular. There are two kind of regular services tomorrow online, and that might be one of them. So if you check with Nathan assign there, you can check with Rabbi Shock and see. Online. In person, it's already set and pre-registered, so there aren't any just showing up in person. But in person, oh yes, with Cheryl Golden, who was at the end, so she would know. She has the list of about pre-registration in person. Online, I know everything about the online pre-registration, but she'll know in person. Hector says I look fancy. Hector says I look fancy. Oh, perfect. Hector says I look fancy.
You look like something.
Yeah, sure.
You look like you're in a bubble.
Hector wanted to know. Yes, wanted to know. Do you want a seat? Like where do you want a seat? Do you want to actually give you a seat? And they could bring another fancy chair.
Yeah, I guess here. Or if he's gonna be there, I guess here.
Stuart's gonna speak here.
I can move out of the way.
Right.
Also true.
You could also.
I think so. I think this is pretty far away.
If they want to bring me.
Do you want to ask Hector where we
Oh, hi, Hector.
He's just waiting and ready to.
Yeah, if you want to bring me one of these chairs and put it right next to where my sleeping bag. On the ground. Yeah. And I'll fill it. Thank you.
That way you don't have to move when Stuart comes.
Yeah, and it'll also be an easy way for me to exit because I'm going to leave right after. But where is he speaking from? Here or the table?
Stuart?
No, right, because
Cheryl's now figured it out.
I mean, I can speak from here.
Although, just a heads up, I asked for my size height one of these, so you would want to probably
Well, this is the big one, right?
maybe, and if it is, then you just have to switch out.
Yeah, this is the new one, I think.
Right. But we wouldn't be able to like switch out in between the bottom and it doesn't matter. I could actually stand where I go for his.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you could switch out for your height.
I mean, I also, if he's going to speak from there, I can speak from there.
Exactly. Let's see what he does.
Wait, Cheryl. You're asking me to mic here. Mic here. I guess I can do this and then just pivot it to the sermon. Okay, great. Yep. Hi, Sue Hetroni. Hello, hello.
I know. Because it's a different height number.
Yes, Kenji. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Louis, who are our Torah holders? Sorry, you're my blessing. Sorry.
Yeah, it's brand new.
They were supposed to be.
All right.
Yeah, but I'm only here.
So Matt's not going to be here. Matt's not coming. We need Torah holders. Me, Rebecca, and Jen. Will you hold a Torah for Nidre? Yeah.
Not the Spartan. Can I just make a deal with you? Is there a Spartan partner? No. Last year in Colombia, when I opened my heart, I had no Torah.
So the only Torah that we have that's actually Sephardic is extremely light. The one that's in the Sephardic container is actually an Ashkenazi Torah.
That one, I don't know how people do it. But by the way, don't forget.
Oh, I thought I saw him. Wow. That's awesome.
They're still isolated.
Hey, Ronnie. Shana Tova. Hey, Landis. Shana Tova. Hey, David. Good, how are you?
Your part is to hum. Your part is to hum.
Oh, my mom. Are they playing the middle one?
Yeah. It sounds beautiful.
No, I know. I'm just excited for it to work. We'll see. I want to see which Torahs we have because I would like to hold the lightest one.
Hold just the latest in there.
Yeah, perfect. How do I know which one's the filter?
The one has the
You'll choose the middle one.
right.
I'll take that one.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Good. Very different message from what you said. We'll see how many people are still members of the program.
I'm excited. I'm excited. That'll be good. We should clear it with you, but it's okay.
Well, some of the ideas got here with you somewhere between Redondo and
I
Manhattan.
like it. I'm excited. It'll be good.
I think we should start soon.
Or is he going to sit there and bobble up?
Don't know. Is this on? Can I be heard? Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, da, 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 da. Yeah, da, da, yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, yeah, yeah, hi, da, 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 yeah, da, 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 da. Yeah, da, da, yeah, da, da, yeah, yeah. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody who's in person. Hi, everybody who's on Zoom. Hi, everybody who's on live stream. Here we are, a Yom Kippur that we never really fathomed could ever materialize, and here it is materializing. And it really is a great blessing to share this with you in person, those of you who are here. And I do hope that for those of you who are experiencing this digitally, that you feel that you're here on some level. We certainly feel your presence. I want to read a poem before we open the Ark. The poem was recently written by the famous Angelino author, Rabbi Cantor Hilary Chorney. It's a short poem, and it has some hidden haikus in it. All the vows I vowed last year have already been undone, unwritten. Promises I would have kept, swept, like unbound pages of a manuscript, unfulfilled, scattered loosely about the quiet, untraveled streets. I planned, I swore. I committed to a blueprint of a year that has dissolved at my fingertips, and there is no following through. Master of the world, all I ask for is a chance to break promises, or better yet, keep them. This year that we're finishing and the year that we're beginning, it's a very different year than we've ever known. And the things that we promised about a year ago in the Jewish calendar and hoped for, things beyond our control made them just impossible to fulfill. But longing for things normal enough that you can just break promises in the normal way, that's what longing has turned into this year. To have a year of normal disappointments, of normal failings, of normal ache, of normal discomfort. Maybe our best hope and prayer for 5781 is that it be as normal and imperfect as was 5779. We rise as the ark is opened on page 204 as 3 scrolls are taken out of the ark.
Yeshiva Shalom Allah, Yeshiva Shalom Ata, Alita Tamhakon, Belita Hatakahan, Anpatiri Leis Valel, Im Havayani. Yeshiva Shalmata, Yeshiva Shalmata, Haleta Tamhakom, Veleta Takan, Matirin Lehit Valeli, Havayani. Shiva Shalmata, Shiva Shalmata, Alita Tamhako, Alita Taka, and Mati Lehit Valel, Im Havayani. Nidre, Visarei, Vacharamei, Vikonamei, The middle paragraph of Kol Nidre is a mixture of three voices, none of which are mine and none of which are here in person. Larry Brayman, Steve Gray, Rabbi Josh Warshawski, and so we listen.
Kol Nidre, Kol Nidre, Kol Nidre, Vesarei, Vecharamei, Vekonamei, Vechinuyei,
Vekinusei, Ushavuot, Din Darna Udeishtabana, Udeacharimna, Vedasana Al Nafshatana
Miyom Kippurim Zeh Ad Yom Kippurim Haba Aleinu Letova
Kulhon Nicharana Vehon Kulhon Yehon Sharan Shavikin Shavitin
V'teilinu mevutalin Lasharirin Velakayamin
Nidrana la Nidre Sarana La Esare
Ushvuatana La Shavuot
Kol Nidre. Yisri.
We repeat that in the middle of the page. V'nislach l'chol adat b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagar b'tocham ki l'chol ha'am bishkaga. We repeat, Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. Again, Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehachiyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh.
may be seated. It's with tremendous honor and love that I invite one of my dearest friends and the president of Temple Beth Am, Stuart Tockner, to share some brief remarks.
The story of this foot, trust me, is not worth talking about. I know it's what you're thinking about. It's getting better. Thank you for your thoughts, but there's really no story there. I want to be honest with all of you. There were several reasons why I wanted to become the president of Temple Beth Am. A pandemic was definitely not one of those reasons. I love this synagogue. My wife, Betty, and I raised our children here. Maya and Jonah went from the transition class all the way through 8th grade at Pressman Academy. I love the clergy. And this community, to me, is really more like extended family. But if I have to give one reason why I really wanted to be the president of Temple Beth Am, it was for this moment. In Kol Nidre, when the president gets to give what can only be loosely called the State of the Shul address, where we go back over the course of the past year and we talk in the future about what we expect. And I know to your great, great disappointment, we're not going to have that today, because the watchword really for this service and really for most of the services that we have here is truncated. That's the word, truncated, which basically means brief. So I will be brief. And I really just have 2 points. First, I am so touched and I am so moved and I am so inspired by you, by this membership, for stepping up the way that you have to support Temple Beth Am during this time. We're not completely there yet. We have a ways to go to ensure that Temple Beth Am can continue to provide the level of service that we always have for our membership. But we are well on our way. And I thank you so much for your support. Look at what we've achieved. We're here today, together, in person, and on Zoom, and on live stream, in ways that many other congregations have not been able to do during this time. This is because of your support. And then the second point I want to make is, even with that support, we would not be able to achieve what we've been able to achieve without the incredible professionals that serve this congregation. We have continued to provide the services that every shul has to provide all the time. Weddings continue, B'nai Mitzvah continue, funerals go on, Bikur Cholim happens, visiting the sick. All of that would be enormously difficult under these circumstances and would be a credit to any congregation who would be able to continue to provide those services. But that is not the extent of what we have done. As those of you who have seen online the many, many innumerable programs that happen here at Temple Beth Am, for those of you who saw the around the country travel log that was put together by our Director of Programming and Engagement, Leah Mandelbaum. Astounding types of programs that have happened since the beginning of the pandemic, without end. And I want to call out by name so that everyone knows and understands the extent to which our staff, all of our staff, have done an amazing job. But in particular, I want to name the senior staff of this congregation who have done such an amazing job. Our senior rabbi, Adam Kligfeld, our cantor, Rabbi Hillary Chorney, our assistant rabbi, Rebecca Schatz, our director of youth learning and engagement, Rabbi Matt Shapiro, our amazing head of school of Pressman Academy, who has made that school not just survive, but thrive during these difficult times, Dr. Erica Rothblum, and our absolutely remarkable executive director, there she is over there, Cheryl Goldman, who despite the fact that, I don't know, she's 30, 32, 35 years old, has kept a handle on this congregation for close to the last quarter century, keeping us on the straight and narrow and never doing as great a job as she did this year. I just want to say that working with these professionals over this period of time makes my job as the lay president of this synagogue as easy as could be. And you're to thank for supporting them. I want to let you know that I will be communicating with you perhaps more regularly than the president of a shul normally would, because we're not able to be together on Shabbat mornings. And I hope, in fact, to be able to send you a video message expanding on some of the themes of what we are doing here at Temple Beth Am, even later this week. But in the meantime, I invite you all to sit back, to relax, and to indulge in the inspired words of our senior rabbi, Adam Kligfeld, as we lean into and begin the Yom Kippur holiday. Shana Tova again to everybody. Gemar Tova. Gemar Tova.
Thank you, Stuart. Don't relax too much. We've consulted with many medical professionals on this note. I very recently received a negative COVID test. I'm no closer than 20 feet from any of you. So much of sermonizing and speaking involves facial expressions. I'm going to take off my mask for the purpose of the sermon. We specifically set up the seating in that way. If you're uncomfortable and you feel you're a little too close, I will not take it personally if you want to move farther back. But again, I'm very recently in receipt of a negative COVID test. How's the sound? Can you hear me? Okay. So Shana Tova, everyone. Marilyn, if you're watching, your Ziering field looks beautiful and has become really our most important institutional asset during this time. I received a really lovely compliment since Rosh Hashanah. Member of the community said to me that he really couldn't remember a time when he more enjoyed hearing my sermon, even on Zoom, mostly because he was doing it in bed while drinking a glass of Merlot, which makes me think that it's been a while since we've done a sanctuary reconstruction. So we're starting a new capital campaign with special seating in the inner rows with a contraption that just produces glasses of wine every 8 minutes in the middle of a sermon. Maybe even on Yom Kippur. Just kidding. Okay, on Rosh Hashanah, I try to share words that bring you comfort. And tonight, I attend to the other part of a rabbi's work, to share words that make you properly uncomfortable, to make you think and rethink, and maybe even to change.
I had a very vivid dream a few weeks ago. I usually don't remember my dreams with such clarity, but this one pierced my consciousness and stayed with me long after I woke. I'm going to share this dream with you with some discomfort, but in good faith, because I understand that it may be a bit disturbing. In my dream, I was in my own home when I found myself walking past a mirror. And when I looked into it, I saw myself, and I was black. I saw myself as a black man. I sort of looked like myself, but I was undeniably black. My reaction was immediate and instinctive. I was afraid. It was the kind of fear that comes when you realize instantly that you are less safe than you once were. I stared at myself with an unsettling, ambiguous fear of my own existence. And when I woke up, the following thought raced through my mind. I need to know more. This dream, I believe, was my mind telling me that whatever I know or think that I know about what it means to be black in America, it's not enough. My dream was my unconscious soaking in the question of how different my life would be had I been born black. And this is my confession. I have not thought enough while awake of that very question. Earlier this year, similar thoughts raced through my mind as I visited the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the newest and therefore the most overdue member of the Smithsonian Institute. I began on the first floor, as most people do, and nearly 3 hours into the visit, I was still on the first floor of 7. I was still in the exhibit of pre-slavery and slavery and couldn't quite escape it, which seems apt. I was devastated by what I saw and read and learned, much of it for the first time. I was shattered by the content in front of me, the imagery, the full horror of the centuries of this American scourge, a terrible blight upon the foundations of this great nation, one that has conceptual descendants that still ruinously infect America. I was overcome by the vicious injustices on display in front of me, but I was also distraught to realize how much I hadn't known. I, a rather well-educated, well-read American citizen who studied history in college, who denounces slavery and celebrates liberation as part of a national holiday every year, I thought I knew more. I thought I knew enough about the Black experience in our country. But there was so much that was out of my sight line, living large, but in my blind spots. I thought I knew what I needed to know, which had left me at an intellectual and emotional plateau with no fire burning within me to know more. And that's the thing about plateaus. They are safe and they are calm. And there is little chance of a spark catching fire. Now, igniting that fire is, of course, the purpose of such a museum. We intuit that in the reverse when people visit our museum a few blocks away. We might walk by people outside the Holocaust Museum, people who look like folks who are delving into the reprehensible details and enormity of the Shoah for the first time, and we hear our voices in our own minds gently taunting them. You thought you knew the Jewish story and how evil the Nazis were, but you didn't know how cold it was in the forests. You didn't know the fear in the eyes of the Jew about to be shot into a ravine. You didn't know about the children separated from their parents, never to see them again. You didn't know because you weren't interested enough to look closely at it and learn the full breadth of what is true. You thought you knew, so you weren't curious to know more. Curiosity, or rather incuriosity, that is what this sermon is about. Far more than issues of race or oppression in our society. I use my dream, an event of my subconscious, pushing me to see myself in the skin of a Black man, and my experience in the museum awakening me to my own distancing from knowledge as examples of the way in which incuriosity can infect an otherwise healthy mind. Incuriosity leaves us blissfully, but also deviously ignorant. We can be so darn comfortable in that ignorance. There are many compelling reasons to resist curiosity at times. Sometimes it's a defense mechanism, sparing us from the pain of knowing something too painful, too raw, too tender to contemplate. Like choosing not to know whether some difficult physical symptoms you're experiencing add up to a degenerative, incurable disease. If you can't do anything about it, why engage with it? Maybe some extended temporary incuriosity in a case like that can be a blessing. But most incuriosities are more denial than defense. We don't really want to know fully how the sausage is made, how the country was made, how our wealth is made and maintained. If we knew, what would we be expected to give up? What responsibility would we be burdened with to fix it? This brand of incuriosity breeds an aristocratic ennui. It can be maintained for years, decades, a lifetime. Once it infects a spirit, it becomes its own ethic and then justifies all that is done to perpetuate it. And then tragically, it can infect a civilization. We can walk through our days, our lives, knowing what we already know and looking for more confirmation of that very knowledge. We may not be aware of it, but we are reticent, maybe even terrified, to know that which will force us to change our minds. Yes, about race and power and privilege, but also about a warming planet and about the levers of economy and the status of justice in our courts and on our streets, and about how much those chains and those whips really hurt. And so we remain selectively incurious. Judaism rejects incuriosity outright. By elevating the yearning to know more to a religious value, our tradition urges us to inquire about everything. The Nobel-winning physicist Isidore Rabbi credits this Jewish ethos with spurring him to a life of science. When he was young and he returned home from school each day, his mother, a Jew who was born and raised in the old country, would not ask him, "Did you learn anything today?" Rather, she asked him, "Izzy, did you ask a good question today?" What a profound question to pose to children, to embed curiosity in their mind, to inculcate in them a thirst to know more, and to staunch incuriosity at its root. We've all read Curious George. We all need to be Curious Jew. When I was a rabbinical student at JTS, the chancellor was Rabbi Dr. Ismar Schorsch. He was a stellar, still is, scholar of German Jewish history. That was his field. He was anything but a mystic. His academic acumen would suggest a defiance of, say, a Hasidic or Kabbalistic understanding of Judaism. And therefore, it was a surprise and it was a thrill when Dr. Schorsch taught a wonderful seminar at the first rabbinic conference I attended after ordination some 20 years ago. I saw his name on the list of presenting scholars, and I figured I could predict the basic topic of his class, something having to do with Wissenschaft des Judentums, that wonderful original German phrase that describes the modern academic approach to studying Judaism and traditional texts. I was wrong. He was teaching 4 classes on a book called the Shnei Luchot Habrit, the 2 tablets of the covenant, written by Rabbi Isaiah Horowitz, a 16th and 17th century mystic. who lived well before Wissenschaft des Judentums was conceived of and developed, and probably would have considered it to be heresy. But Schorsch apparently did not consider Horowitz's writings to be heretical. Far from it. He delighted in exploring the mystical theologies and religious mores in this work. He opened up that tome to us as a treasure, both venerating Horowitz by teaching it so lovingly, and defying the very sort of closed thinking and calculated or dogmatic incuriosity that Horowitz almost certainly would have showed had he been exposed anachronistically to what Schorsch taught and believed. According to Schorsch, a Jew is forbidden to be incurious about parts of the inherited tradition, about anything for that matter. And he said as much many times over when he could explain why, for him personally, Orthodoxy had its beauties, but could never be a spiritual home for him. He wrote, quote, "What conservative Judaism brings to this ancient and unfinished dialectic are the tools and perspectives of modern scholarship, blended with traditional learning and empathy. The full meaning of sacred text will always elude those who restrict the range of acceptable questions and who fear to read contextually and who engage in willful ignorance." Willful ignorance. That is a phrase far more damning than incuriosity. And Schorsch had no problem accusing parts of the Orthodox world, themselves inheritors of an endlessly curious rabbinic tradition, with taking a willfully ignorant stance about some parts of Jewish tradition that might shatter some faith foundations, yes, and which could tear asunder the power dynamic that keeps men in charge of discerning God's word. Schorsch taught that our faith commands that we not descend to incuriosity. Schorsch was scolding us. Don't you dare be too comfortable in what you already know. Instead, he urged us, be curious Jews. I learned that lesson in a profound way during one of the most excruciating and also exquisite role play exercises I ever participated in. It was in college in the early 90s. And let's just say that a generation ago, our society was in a very different place regarding LGBTQ issues compared to now. And the Jewish community even more so, and the observant Jewish community much more so. On a Shabbat afternoon at Columbia, the Jewish community met for an extended seminar aimed at sensitizing the Jewish students to the plight of their gay and lesbian peers. Straight students were asked to do the following role play. Come out as a gay person to your parents. This is the dramatic version of dreaming you are black. It was a profound thing to do and to observe others do. Watching from religious Jews who had been taught religiously and communally to be willfully ignorant of the reality of gay Jews in their midst say these words, Mom, Dad, Abba, Ima, I have something important to tell you. And I hope you will love me just as much after I tell it to you. It was watching a heart open. It was observing piercing knowledge, both eminently accessible and yet for this group so new, pry open the doors of one's mind, allowing curiosity to replace incuriosity. There is no claiming you don't know after you have tried to tell your Orthodox parents you are gay. Jewish values say there are things you simply must know, or at least try to know, even though you'd rather not. That brings me to Palestine, a place that does not politically exist, at least not yet, but a place that on a conceptual, cultural, and human interest level very much exists. As many of you know, I spent 4 days a couple of years ago on a trip called Encounter, designed to expose American and Israeli Jewish leaders to Palestinian life, narrative, and experiences. The trip was a painful experience of challenging my own incuriosity. There are certain things about being a Palestinian Arab, going through checkpoints, suffering indignities that are not justified by any political or religious argument, observing rank inequality doled out to one's own community and self compared to one's Jewish neighbors. There's some of that I will admit I had for years preferred to be willfully ignorant about. So much so that I rejected several invitations before this to participate in Encounter, because that incuriosity can be so darn comfortable. Now, one is given very clear and important instructions when one participates in Encounter. And the most important one might be this: suppress, at least for 4 days, just for 4 days, your urge, your preference not to know. Suppress your instinct to fight back before first truly hearing and considering. Just listen. Just shut up patiently for 4 days. It's not a willful exercise in self-abnegation to know another's story, another person's truth, another's indignity and pain. And I can testify, they were right on many levels, and it was hard. I spent 4 days trying not to squirm, not react or reject, squelching the counter arguments that welled up in my cortex. But I'm so glad that I did. And later, I was ashamed to think that I'd been so resistant. What price did I expect I'd have to pay for being curious? After 4 days, I wasn't converted. I had not betrayed myself or my Zionism or my people. The wrenching experience proved to me that I don't lose me by hearing you. I don't surrender territory by surrendering ego and certitude. I just grow. And I become more deeply curious Jew. In early September, hopefully kicking off years of meaningful relationship and social justice work, Beth Am hosted a Zoom event that brought us together with some local Black communities of faith, a night of listening and learning. And after the main presentation, during which we'd heard from a variety of white and Black and Jewish and Christian voices, I hosted one of the breakout rooms. One of the people in my room told this story. She, a white woman, had been confused and saddened and so many other things by so many of the events this past summer. And she wanted to do something, but she didn't know what. Someone had suggested to her that she simply ask a Black person how they are doing. So she sought out someone in her neighborhood, a face she recognized, but a life story she really didn't know. She asked this person how she was doing, and then she listened for 2 hours. Seems like such a banal, easy thing to do. Go listen to someone. It's not. It's everything. We think we know who they are, what they experience, what world they live in, but so often we don't. We don't if we are white and they are Black. We don't if we are straight and they are gay. We don't if we are blue and they are red, or vice versa. We don't if we are wealthy and they are poor. We don't if we are happy and they are depressed. We don't ask, but we must in order to be curious. Curious Jews. Einstein valued curiosity above all things, saying the important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing, end quote. And to me, that quote was improved upon by Jiddu Krishnamurti. He was a 20th century Indian speaker and writer, a product of a culture of castes and divisions, who famously said he was enslaved by no allegiance to nationality, religion, or philosophy that would stem his zeal to be constantly learning and growing. He once said, quote, "The ability to observe without evaluating is the highest form of intelligence," end quote. He was not saying never to evaluate or choose a side. But if you are always only evaluating, defending your flank, protecting your group, forming your retort, willfully ignoring the possibility that the other person or idea or stance has merit, then you are wasting human intelligence and poisoning human society. Above all, be curious. I read the Torah religiously. And I also read the LA Times opinion page religiously. Every editorial, every letter to the editor, every op-ed, even and especially when I know from the headline that the content will boil my blood. One of my favorite writers is Nicholas Goldberg in the Times. I love him because I never know in advance whether I will agree with him or not. He seems to be a polymath and wondrously hard to pin down and put in a single ideological box. In a recent piece in which he critiques President Trump for what I will admit seems like a pathological incuriosity about so many things, he wrote what I think could and should be a manifesto on American civics. This is what he wrote. Unsurprisingly, there are those who write about the United States as a consistent force for good, and others who are deeply critical of it. That's because some focus on the long, slow expansion of rights, the broadening of liberal democracy, the growth of a giant middle class, the commitment to political liberty, while others emphasize the evils of slavery, the genocide of the indigenous people, and the centuries-long denial of rights to marginalized communities. End quote. Notice in your mind how few people you come across who valorize and give full ear to both of those approaches to America's story. He goes on, perhaps unwittingly invoking the Talmud in Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. History is richer and more complete because of these competing factions. Put that on Pinterest. Tweet that out. In addition to our slogans and signs for this candidate or against that one, how about cheering the notion of reading widely against one's grain, against the orthodoxy of one's comfort zone and ideological community? How about we all look in the mirror and try to look past ourselves to others who have beauty and stories and realities that we sometimes elect willfully not to consider. If you take a conservative approach to America, pick up Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. Not to convert yourself, but to know some important stuff you don't yet know and might prefer not to know. It will make you a better American. It won't kill you, and it might grow you. And if the American and Jewish left is your home base, read the Wall Street Journal or the Allgemeiner and assume that its authors are neither moronic nor monstrous. Your iconoclastic curiosity, which pushes against today's currents, will ennoble you. We must, as Jews and Americans, poised at this very precarious moment, with fissures threatening to tear all of our tentative unities asunder, we must take responsibility for at least trying to know what we don't know, trying to know whom we don't know, and to see what shared humanity we have with the other, and to learn even from them. Let us dream not only of ourselves as we are now. Let's bring others' faces into our mirrors, others' narratives and pains within our hearts, and thus broadening the people we are still in the midst of becoming. This year, when you look in the mirror, try to see someone other than yourself. I wish you a Shana Tova and a meaningful fast. We now rise to begin the Mariv service. On page 207 for the Baruch Hu. Right after the Baruch Hu, you may be seated.
את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch le'olam ba'ed.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם מבורך.
May be seated.
ברוך אתה אדוני. מבהיר יום ומביא לילה, מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים. תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אמרי ורבי, ואהבת עולם בשפע. אם היינו ואורך ימינו, והם נגי יומם ולילה באהבתך. התשים ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. ומלכותו ברצון גידלו עליהם משה ובני ישראל. לכנו שירה ושמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות הוסיף אלי, מלכותך רעו פניך וקיים לפני משה. זה מינו ויאמרו אדוני מלוך לעולם מבורך. נאמר כי פתח אדוני את הכל וגדול יד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני כישראל. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. ברוך Berchat Adonai Haporesu Kait Shalom Aleinu V'Hal Kol Amo Yisrael Ve'Al Yerushalayim.
Please rise, second paragraph, 212.
כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם, לטהר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני תטהרו. יתקדש שמי רבה,
Amen.
ויעמד יפרח ידותי, וימליך בחותי. וחייכון וימיכון וחיי בית ישראל בגאווה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ועולם ביומיה. Yitbarach, Yitbarach, Yishabach, Yitbahar, Yitshama, Yitrasei, Yitadar, Yitzalev, Yitalal, Shemedi Kudesha, Berichu, Lehei, Lehei, Mikol Berchata V'Shirata, Tushmevata, V'Nefem Ha'Leta, Damiran V'Halema, V'Himeru,
Amen. The Amidah said in a quiet whisper, beginning 213.
Page 223. If you've completed your quiet Amidah, you may be seated. Am I correct that you can't hear Rabbi Chorny through the microphone? You can hear, but not through the microphone. Okay, we're gonna try to fix that. We're gonna turn to page 225 for Hanasham Malach. Hopefully that can be fixed very, very quickly. Page 225.
Hanishamalach v'hakuf bolach chufsa chufsa alamach Hanishamalach v'hakuf bolach chufsa chufsa alamach הנשם הלך והגוף שלך, אדוני עשה למען שמך, עתנו על שמך, אדוני עשה למען שמך, בעבור כבוד שמך, כי אל חנון ורחום שמך, למען שמך אדוני, וסלחתי לעווננו, כי רע והוא.
middle of 226, please rise as we prepare to say the 13 attributes of the Holy One.
Tavor al pesha, v'timchehu sham ki yom v'yitzav imosha. Tazim shabbateinu, v'takshiv menu ma'amar ki yom v'yikra v'shem Adonai, v'yavor Adonai al panav v'yikra. Adonai, Adonai, Erachum bechanun, Erech apayim, Erav chesed ve'emet, Notzer chesed l'malachim, Noser avon v'afesha, V'chata v'nakei, v'salachti lavoneinu, v'chatateinu, v'chatanu, salach lanu avinu ki chatanu, v'chalanu malkeinu ki fashanu, yata Adonai tov v'salach, v'rav chesed l'chol korecha.
May be seated 227. We'll say the first two paragraphs and the last paragraph of Kihine Kachomer.
Kihine kachomer miyad hayotzer, birtzoto marchiv, uvirtzoto mekatzer, ki anachnu yadecha chesed noter, labrit habet ve'hatefel la'yetzer. Hine ka'even v'yad hasatet, birtzoto al-ches uvirtzoto mechatzer. Ein אנחנו בידך וחייהו נותנת לברית הבית והתפן ליצר.
Last verse.
הנה ככסף ביד הצורף, ברצותו משגשג וברצותו מצרף. אין אנחנו בידך ממציאים למזור טרף, לברית הבית והתפן ליצר.
Middle of 229. Again, we rise to recite the 13 attributes.
הוריד לנו לומר 13, זכור לנו היום בראשון 13, כמו שהדעת לעניו מקדם, כמו שכתוב, וירד אדוני בעיניו, ויתייצב עמו שם, ויקרא בשם אדוני, ויעבור אדוני על פניו, ויקרא. Adonai, Adonai, Erachum v'chainu, Erech apayim, Erav chesed ve'emet, Notzer chesed l'malachim, Nosei avon v'afesha, v'chata v'nakei, v'salachti lavoneinu, chatateinu, v'chatanu, salach lanu avinu ki chatanu, v'chalanu malkeinu ki fashanu, ki ata Adonai tov v'salach, v'rav chesed l'chol korecha.
May be seated. One of my Facebook friends, Rabbi Shmuley Yanklowitz, he posted a picture of one of his children last week.
just the back of his child to protect his privacy. And under the picture, he wrote these words. Recently, I had to take him to an emergency dental appointment, a pediatrician, 2 root canals, 3 major cavities, tooth extractions, urgent care for a COVID test, a pediatric urologist, a 3rd emergency dental appointment. And that's just the last 2 weeks, and prior to all the therapeutic and developmental appointments to come. Please wish him blessings and for us strength and patience in bringing healing, stability, and growth to him. Raw and honest. It's kind of a strange message also. But I left out the first part of what he wrote. The first part of what he wrote said this: every foster child in our home has had medical and developmental needs. But since these 2 arrived, it's more than we imagined. That's how Rabbi Shmuley is extending himself during COVID, modeling what righteousness really could be. And it reminds me of some tremendous stories. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, who was the founder of the Musar movement, the movement that tried to wed personal ethics with religious piety. And during a different epidemic, the cholera epidemic in the 19th century, he stood out for his leadership. Once on Yom Kippur, during that epidemic, Rabbi Yisrael, despite opposition from other rabbis, urged his people to eat so as to be strong and not to contract the disease. And when his people remained apprehensive, he ascended the pulpit and ate cake and wine in front of the entire congregation and rabbinical authorities. And then one by one, his congregants followed his example. And then Rabbi Yisrael went to the other synagogues doing the same, urging them to eat. Another time during the epidemic, he urged the community to convert the great synagogue into a hospital and poorhouse. And despite opposition from the president of the community and other rabbis, he succeeded. Yet another time, Rabbi Yisrael was so disturbed by the impoverished condition of the house for the poor and the community that he slept there in protest rather than his own house. And when the scandalized community leaders found him there, they pleaded with him to leave. They felt shamed and outraged that their most distinguished scholar and leader was sleeping amongst the filth of the beggars. But Rabbi Salanter refused to leave until the house was cleaned and repaired. We're about to stand on 233 for the Shema Kolenu prayer. And one of the lines we're going to say is, Al tashlichenu milfanecha. Don't cast us from your presence, O God. Al tashlichenu le'ed zigna. When we get old, don't send us away. Kichlot kochenu. When our energy wanes and ebbs. Al ta'azvenu. Do not abandon us. Look at what we are pleading for God to do for us. The question might be, who is asking that of us? And how much might we be willing to sacrifice? Please rise 233. Betty, do you want to open the ark? I'd ask Stuart, but you know.
Shema Kolenu Adonai Eloheinu Hus Merachem Aleinu Vekabel Berachamim Uvratzon et Tefillatenu.
We repeat, Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Hus Vrachem Aleinu, Vekabel Brachmim Ratzon et Tefillatenu.
Ashivenu,
Ashivenu,
Elecha Venashuva Kadesh Yameinu Kekedem Tashlichenu milfanecha viruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu.
We repeat, Al tashlichenu milfanecha, barach kodshecha, al tikach mimenu.
Tashlichenu lehei sikna kiflot kuchenu al tazavenu.
Al tashlichenu li'etzikna kichlot kocheinu al tazveinu. The ark is closed. Please turn to page 234. You may be seated.
Elohei v'Elohei Avoteinu Selach lanu v'chalanu kaper lanu Hihainu amecha
V'yata Eloheinu anu vanecha v'yata avinu anu avadecha v'yata Adoneinu anu kehalecha v'yata chelkeinu anu nachlatecha v'yata goraleinu anu tzonecha v'yata roeinu anu charmecha v'yata notreinu anu fe'ulatecha v'yata yotzereinu anu rayatecha v'yata dodeinu anu segulatecha v'yata keroveinu anu hamlecha v'yata malkeinu anu mamirecha v'yata mamireinu anu azefanim v'tarahum v'chanu nanu k'shei horef v'yata erechafayim anu le'avav v'yata malei rachamim anu yameinu kitzelover v'yatahu ushnotecha lo yitamu Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu tavo lefanecha tefilatenu v'al titalam mitechinatenu she'in anachnu azefanim uk'sheyaref lomar lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu tzadikim anachnu v'lo chatanu אנחנו ואבותינו חטאנו. Please rise 235.
Ay, 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 Hashamenu, Bagadenu, Gazalnu, Tibarnu Dofi, Hebinu, Lehirshanu, Zadnu, Hamasnu, Tafalnu Shaker, Yahatsnura, Kizabnu, Latsnu, Maradnu, Mihatsnu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Sararnu, Kishinu Horeb, Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tihavnu, Tainu, Titanu, Sanu, Mitzvotecha, Umishpatecha, Hatovim, V'lo Shavalanu, Yetat Tzadik al Kol Haba Halenu, Ki Hemet Asita, Anachnu Hirshanu.
We turn to the bottom of 236 as we lead into the Al-Khaits. Please remain standing.
אתה יודע את זה עולם, ואתה לא מוציא תרי כל חי. אתה חופש כל חדרי בתנו וכן כליות בלב. אין דבר נעלה ממך, ואין נסתר מנגד עיניך. וכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שתסלח לנו על כל חטאותינו, שתמחה לנו על כל עוונותינו, ותכפר לנו על כל פשעינו. הלכי שחטאנו לפניך באונס ורצון, הלכי שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב, הלכי שחטאנו לפניך. והלכית שחטאנו לפניך ביצר הרע, והלכית שחטאנו לפניך ביודעים ולא יודעים. והיה לכולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו. אחרי שרצנו לפניך וכפת שוכר. אחרי שחטאנו לפניך בעיניים רמות, ואחרי שחטאנו לפניך בעזות מצח. והיה לכולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו. אחרי שחטאנו לפניך בברכת עול, אחרי שחטאנו לפניך בגדלות. אחרי שחטאנו לפניך בתשומת יד, ואחרי שחטאנו לפניך בתימום לבב. והיה לכולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו,
standing 243. Once again, the ark is open for Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Ein lanu melech ela ata. Avinu Malkeinu, Hachazirinu b'tshuva, Shlema lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, achzirinu b'shuva shlema lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shalach refuah shlema lecholei amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, shlach refuah shlema lecholei amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, Zochreinu b'zikaron tov lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, zochreinu b'zikaron tov lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kotveinu b'sefer chayim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotveinu b'sefer chaim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kotveinu b'sefer geulah Yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotveinu b'sefer geulah v'yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kotveinu b'sefer parnasa v'chakala.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotveinu b'sefer parnasa v'chakala.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kotveinu b'sefer zechuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotveinu b'sefer zechuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kotveinu b'sefer slicha umchila.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotveinu b'sefer slicha umechila.
Avinu Malkeinu, atzlach lanu Yeshua b'kachol Malkeinu v'lehem. Avinu Malkeinu asay leman chaim lo lemanenu. Avinu Malkeinu Oneinu v'neinu. Avinu Malkeinu Oneinu v'neinu. Yehein banu ma'asim. Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed v'hoshi'enu.
Hadish Shalem 245. Maybe seated if you want.
Yitkata v'yitkata shemei Rabbi.
Amen.
V'yomati v'rak yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayichon v'yom heichon v'chayei techo beit Yisrael v'gala v'bizman karim v'yimeru v'yimeru. Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbi Mefarach le'alam v'lamei hamaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithazar v'yitale v'yitalal Shemei dekudesh haberichu le'ela le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damira me'ama v'yimeru. Amen. Titkabal zelotehon lotehon lechol Yisrael kadam avuhon tivishmaya 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 imeru imeru. Amen. Yehesh lama rabba mi chemaya v'chaim Aleinu ve'hakol Yisrael
Meru.
Imeru
Amen.
Amen. Hase shalom bimromo. Yase shalom. Aleinu, aleinu. Ve'hakol Yisrael. Nimeru.
Amen. Please rise for Aleinu 246.
Aleinu lishabeach ladon hakol, latej gedula liotze bereshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzon, velo samhanu kamishbechot hajama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamhonam, vanachnu koreim, ומשחרים מודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך.
Akinakar b'lachad Eloheinu l'romehei, Rabbi Tiferet uzecha l'takeinu l'malchut shel
וכתוב בתורה שחננאים לך לעולם ועד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
May be seated. The Psalm for the High Holiday Season, page 248.
אחת שמתי מאת אדוני, אחת שאלתי אותה אבקש. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אחת שאלתי אותה אבקש. שבתי בית. לולא האמנתי לראות בטוב אדוני בארץ חיים, קווה אל אדוני חזק במץ ליבך, כפקווה אל אדוני.
Mourner's Kaddish, Kaddish Tom, page 247. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabba.
Amen.
Bi'alma divra chirutei, bi'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, b'agala ubizman kari v'meru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shemei Rabba mevarach le'olam le'omei almaya, Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei dekudusha brichu. Le'ela, le'ela, mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'meru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'mru Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom v'yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'mru Amen.
Amen.
Our goal was about 8 o'clock tonight, and I think we did it. If you know a little bit about singing, you know that it's an incredibly hard thing to do, to sing with 10%, 15%, 20% of your potential output and still have it hit the right emotional and spiritual notes. We want to commend Rabbi Chorny for chazaning through just an impossible situation and for delivering the notes and the feeling of the service exactly as they ought to have been, even in your hockey penalty box. We all felt that we were in there with you, and Yasher Koach. It was a beautiful, sweet Kol Nidre paragraphs and service. Kol HaKavod. The immediate past president's remarks will begin at 8:05 p.m. I suggest that you all leave before that begins. Sorry, Avi, had to. This is the hardest part of this. We're going to have to say goodbye to each other without schmoozing, and it's so unnatural and so un-Jewish and so un-Beth Am, and so what the moment requires. So what we're going to ask that people do is, first of all, leave your chumash, your machstream on your chairs. We'd rather you leave them on the chairs, and the staff will come afterwards to sanitize them, put them back, rather than have you gather at the carols. We're going to leave a few minutes for those who might need a little bit of help getting out early to get out early. And then it's going to be like, I don't know, when your bunk is called for snack time at Ramah, we're going to have you go one row at a time and really honor that. And again, it goes against everything that is dear to me to not come up to you and embrace you and wish you a good yantif and ask how things are going. But we're going to have to forego that. Tomorrow, there are services throughout the day. I think if you're here, it means you're not going to be here tomorrow because you're only allowed one appearance on Yom Kippur. But hopefully we'll see you on Zoom and on live stream for meditation and Hamalot and Shachrit and Musaf and Ne'ilah and Purim and Hanukkah and Shavuot, all happening tomorrow. We're going to conclude. We're going to serenade you out one row at a time. If you would like to sing along with us, it's page 249 for Adon Olam, and wish you a good yantif, a meaningful fast. We love you and we miss you very much.
Could we do 250? Could I request that?
Yes, there's been a request for 250. Yalla, 250. Let's add a page.
Yigdal Elohim Chai Ve'yishabach Nimtza V'heinei Mitziuto Echad Ve'ein Yachid Keichudo Na'elav V'gam Ein Sof Le'achduto Ein lo zemhut haguf v'yeino guf lo naroch elav kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon ve'ein reshit le'reshito Hino Adon Olam V'chol Notzar Yorei Gedulato U'malchuto Shefa Nevuato Nitan Ohel Anshei Sekulato V'tifarto Lo ekam beYisrael kemo sheyod navi umabit et emunato Torah temet natan liham ohel hayad mevio neman beito Lo yachalif ha'el Lo yamir dato Liho le'amim lezulato Sofei ve'yodeya Sitarenu Nabit lesof davar Be'kad mato Gomel leish chesed Emifalo Notein le'rashara Kerishato Yishlach leketz yamin Neshichayinu Livdot mechakeketz Yeshuato Neitim Yechayel V'roch chasto Baruch Hadayat Shem Tehilato מתים יחייל מרוח ההיסטור ברוך עדי עד
Shem Tehillah. Avi, looks like you got a big crowd. I know.
Was that slow enough, Jen Lo? Was it so much better?
I know.
I know, because I did it way, I did it. I messed it up big time.
Was she not breathing during Yigdal? I mean, it was so bad. So that's why she.
Got it. It was perfect.
Now we moved on from Monica.
Exactly. We'll always have Anna McCall, Jennifer. Gil, still in this thing?
Yeah, Thursday I get out of it.
How long have you been in there?
5.5
Man,
Yeah, I'm almost done. And then 6 months so to go back to start.
don't you hate that thing? And aren't you feel you have the muscle pain back here too? Yeah. Oh.